Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shift Book Club. I'm creator of the Shift, Sam Baker, and I'm delighted to be here with you. Who hasn't muted? Who do I need? Somebody mute, please. Okay, cool. I'm delighted to be here with Catherine Newman, author of this month's book club pick, Sandwich. I was just about to pick the wrong one up because I've basically got my treasured We All Want Possible Things here too. Sandwich. In Sandwich, we join Rocky, one leg either side of the midlife chasm, on her annual family escape to Cape Cod, where she finds herself sandwiched between her not quite adult enough children and her still healthy-ish but definitely aging parents, and her loving but willfully oblivious husband, Nick. That's accurate, isn't it? It's a bittersweet week laden with love, stress, and the tensions of secrets bursting to be told. And Rocky's body is in revolt because perimenopause is upon her. So she's not the only one who's hurtling headlong into change. As with Catherine's best-selling debut, my beloved We All Want Impossible Things, Sandwich is devastatingly funny, perfectly pitched between sorrow and joy. She's been praised by the likes of Bonnie Garmus, Katherine Heiny, and the Queen Marian Keyes, who compared Catherine to Nora Ephron. There's no higher accolade, in my opinion. Catherine is also an award-winning writer and columnist who contributes regularly to the New York Times and O magazine. For 10 years, she also wrote Real Simple's etiquette column, which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. And she has an excellent Substack. Yeah, well, I'll make you talk about that later. Crone Sandwich, which we'll also talk about later. Yeah, Crone Sandwich. Actually, let's talk about that now. Where did the Crone Sandwich title come from? I love it.
Crone Sandwich is the title that I wanted to give the novel, actually. but I think brilliant. It was a little off-putting.
No. God, so who was that? Your American publisher? Or both sides?
I mean, I don't know if I really kind of went with it. It was hard enough to get sandwiched through, honestly, without tacking Crone onto it. So I kind of picked my battles.
Yeah, fair enough. So as usual, we'll chat for about 45 minutes, then there'll be time for questions. If you're watching this live, do bung your questions in the chat box as you think of them, because we might pick them up as we go along if they kind of pertain to what we're talking to. So welcome to the Shift Book Club, Catherine.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
Oh, we're delighted to have you here. It was very popular. I mean, it's so interesting. I can always tell by how popular it's going to be by the speed that the free copies go and how many extras I have to go beg back from the publisher. So by lunchtime on the day I announced it, I was emailing your publisher in the UK going, please, can I have some more? Because I'm disappointing so many people. So it was an instant hit. So let's start with, what was your original elevator pitch for Sandwich, your agent or publisher or wherever you started?
My original, I really don't talk about books I'm writing until they're almost done. It's a kind of superstition where I'm just worried I won't write it. Like I'll have somehow blurted it out into the world and then I'll suffer the sort of doubled humiliation of having talked about it and not actually finishing it. So I got very close to finishing it and I called my agent and I said, oh, I'm almost done with a new book. And she was like, oh, that's exciting. You know, what's it about? And I said, it's about reproductive mayhem. And she was like, oh, okay. Well, that sounds fun. She was like, is it about anything else? You know, or really just that? And I was like, oh, no, it's about a beach vacation. Like, I was like, we could pitch it as like, it's about a beach vacation. And then the reproductive mayhem will just like slide under and get everybody. And so we did kind of pitch it as both things because the truth is it really is both things, you know, in the way that we live both things all the time. That there's always a million dots you can connect about any day in your life to tell a million different stories. And so on any given vacation, it's like you're on vacation and also you're in your body, in your actual human body, having a bodily experience, even though it's not what we always talk about. You're muted, I think, for some reason, Sam. Still.
Yeah.
There you are.
Okay. How weird. Am I okay now?
Yeah.
That's really weird because I've got a big sign flashing up saying your microphone is now muted. How
That's
peculiar.
very strange.
Zoom is messing with me. What was I going to say? I know what I was going to say. There is obviously we were talking about how many people love sandwich and we all want impossible things just before we let everybody in. And you said except for the ones who don't. And whilst we have no time for the ones who don't around here, I've read like 99.9% of the reviews I've read were like bowing down at the feet of Catherine Newman. And then I read one that said, oh, basically, I love this book, but I basically didn't like the fact that Rocky was thinking about the things she was thinking about on holiday. And I just thought, I want to hit you. And like, how, I mean, so you go on holiday, you only allow yourself to think shiny, happy things. But also, I wanted to know how old that reviewer was because I think anybody who is anywhere near perimenopause will know that that's exactly what happens to you in perimenopause. You think about all kinds of shit that you'd rather not think about and have maybe successfully avoided thinking about for ages.
Yes.
Have you had a lot of that weirdness?
Some of it. I'll tell you this story. I keep swearing I'm not going to tell anymore, but I'll just tell it this one last time, just amongst us. We're all just friends here. Don't, find the person who did this and tell them I told you the story of it. But I was being interviewed by a father and daughter interview team in the US. They're really great. Like it was an amazing interview. And he's maybe in his mid 80s and she's just a little younger than me. And they were asking me all these great questions. It was wonderful. And he said, why did you think, he said it was such a lovely story about this family at the seaside. Everybody seems to really love each other. Why did you go and kind of glump it all up with this like horrible sort of like menopause and pregnancy stuff? And I opened my mouth to speak and the daughter goes, oh my God, Dad, because that's what it's about. Like she was she could have been 15 years old. Oh my God, Dad. And I just felt it too. But I did say to him at the time, I was like, tell me about it. Like, of course, everyone wants to have the unsullied beach vacation where somehow you are skimming across the surface of your week without, any trauma or hormonal misapprehensions. But it's not really how people live. And part of what the book's about, as I'm sure you grasped, is at no point in her life was that what the vacation was. At every moment, it was the truly beautiful experience of being at the beach with her husband and kids and parents, and also this other experience of being afraid or being angry or being sorrowful or being some combination of all of those things, bleeding, pregnant, nursing, just all of the layers of stuff happening all at once. And I did want it to be that.
Or just to be like real. I mean, the kind of precarity of life, whether it's at this life stage or like you say, in earlier motherhood or, later when has everybody finished it? Just whack a quick line in. I mean, we won't do spoiler. We'll be careful not to spoil, but I would say, later on down the line when there might be other children in the frame or, whatever the life stage, Oh, couldn't put it down. Excellent.
Mm.
Yeah, it's that kind of constant running around after people, whether you're, you've got small children, you've got elderly parents, you've got adult children, that's kind of life for most women.
Mm.
Catherine, are you there?
I am.
You are. You are. Great.
Can you hear
Sorry.
me?
Yes, I don't know what's going on with, do you know what? I've done an update on my laptop and I swear I am not going to do any more bloody updates. So, if you got me okay now?
Yeah. I've
Yeah,
had you
great.
the whole time.
You have it. So the problem is
Except that
my
one
end.
little one.
Fantastic. Good to know. So tell us a bit more about Rocky, where she came from. What?
Yes. Yeah, Rocky is she's, not that different from me in most ways. I mean, my other favorite thing people say to me is like, yeah, I really like the book. I just got like really sick of Rocky. And I'm like, oh yeah, tell me about it. Like you got sick of Rocky,
Yeah.
Imagine how sick of Rocky I am. But anyways, really sick of Rocky. She's just
Why?
oh no, I'm kidding. Oh, because I mean it's annoying to be that way, obviously. Um, but she's very similar to me. I mean, I think the way that she loves very completely, she's very she's just crazily in love with her kids, with her husband, who also drives her crazy, with her parents, who are old and annoying. But it's mostly a love letter to all of those people. And I obviously really identify with that. And I also really identify with a person who is trying to ask people not to look away from pain, her own or anybody's, and her sort of anger about that. And I identify with that too.
I mean, when you handed it in, are your publishers very much like, this is the Catherine Newman novel, great? Or are they like, oh, can you just make it a bit happier? Or, can you not have the abortion bit at the end,
No, I did not get any of that. Bless them. I have the most incredible editors, both here and in the UK. No, nothing like that. The only an absolute support around every part of it that had to do with women's reproductive health. There was not any, if there was internal nervousness, nobody shared it with me. I did not see a word about it. And I appreciate that beyond measure, truly, because it could have been so different. The only thing my beloved UK editor said to me is, you cannot start it with the clogged toilet, because the book used to start right in the middle of that scene, and that scene used to be a little grosser, and it started there. He was like, please write a little prologue that kind of gentles us into the scene. And that was really excellent advice, because it's true it's who Rocky is and who I am as a writer, but it's also, I understood suddenly that might be a little aggressive, like unnecessarily aggressive, to start you with a clogged toilet. So that was, and then tons of great advice about different things, but nobody said the book is incoherent. Like, why is it these two different things? Nobody said, we don't want there to be this abortion thing. That's a liability for us, even though I know that it is. So that was just really, I just treasure those relationships, and I treasure that it's women. I mean, that it's, these are editors who are women and who are deeply committed to supporting this kind of story.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important. I think one of the things that's really interesting to me is how the industry's approach to older women and older women's stories has changed just in like maybe 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's only like maybe 29, so pre-pandemic, you know, you had publishers rejecting books on the grounds that nobody wanted to hear about middle-aged women. And now it feels like, praise be, that, you know, we're actually getting, and then not just the sidekick in someone else's story, we're actually getting, you know, the real kind of, you know, meat and gristle of, you know, middle-aged women's lives, which is fabulous. Is there
Yeah, I
anybody?
just read Miranda July's All Fours. I just read it. So
I
we went
love it.
camping over. I loved it so much. We camped over the weekend and it rained a lot, and our tent is incredibly waterproof, which is new for us. We used to have this tent where the whole time it was raining, you were like doing triage on various leaks. This experience, we lay in bed in the tent for untold numbers of hours reading. It was so heavenly. I read that book cover to cover and I loved it. I was like a little envious. You know, it's
Yes,
so
so
just like
envious.
blowing itself off the page. And there was some moment where she said something about like black eels coming out of her, like while she was having her period during this perimenopause. And I was like, black eels. Like, I am so with her on that. And I thought, yeah, how amazing, you know, that these two books came out basically the same month that talk about like menopausal clotting, basically.
Yeah.
And they were just like ushered through the pipeline. It's amazing. I'm so thrilled.
And it really feels like it wouldn't have happened 4 or 5 years ago, for sure.
I
Definitely.
feel the same.
Why do you think it's taken so long? Oh, cat's stirring, jellyfish is stirring behind you. Oh no, she's just rearranged herself. She's fine.
Why did it take so long?
Mm,
I mean, I do think that we're in this cultural shift that has had to do with various political movements. Like, I do think that the political movements are kind of leading intellectual movements and publishing. And I'm thinking about like Black Lives Matter and Me Too, and the way these political movements are saying, wait, all of this thing, the way it's always been is just not at all acceptable in any way. And that is, I think, creating a lot of, I mean, ultimately, it's like financial decisions. These companies they're gambling on this. They're assuming they're going to make money. They're not doing anyone a favor, you know, they're not trying to be nice. But that there's somehow this sense now that like women are a voting body with money, and, you know, that we're actually the main book buyers, among other things, you know, and this happened around motherhood maybe 20 years ago.
yeah.
Where there was this sudden moment of like, oh, motherhood's not just like women in clean white nighties, like bent over a crib smiling, you know, it's actually really gory and awful. And there's a lot of like mental health issues and whatever. That had its moment where it was like, oh, we could tell the truth about this. And there's actually a market for that. And I think that's the same thing with menopause. We are a massive book buying demographic.
Yeah, and it's like they've finally realized that, although I think a lot of other industries haven't yet. You know, the advertising industry would be a case in point, but I will not go off on that because everybody will be thinking, oh God, here she goes. Let's get back to the book.
Feel
I
free
mean,
at any moment.
I mean, you mentioned Miranda July's brilliant book, but one of the things I really loved about Sandwich is that, you know, sex and intimacy in long-term relationships is so rarely written about. That, you know, menopausal sex is so rarely written about. It's almost like we're at this point where we're allowed to have menopause and still exist, but like, whoa, you want to have sex too? Well, roll it back a little bit, will you? Do you? What was your thought process when you were building Rocky and Nick's relationship?
Well, it's sort of similar to the like beach vacation grief and trauma. Like I wanted it to hold all of the things that he's an inarguably wonderful partner and man, and she is truly enraged about the way she feels that she has had to carry alone kind of the emotional weight of the family and of their allegedly joint experience getting pregnant and birthing children and not successfully birthing them. So I guess it was that was the process. Is in essence she adores him and she's pissed a lot. She's just angry. Part of that's menopause, and I have experienced a great deal of free-floating rage that is, I understand, hormonal, and that attaches itself to any passing hook. Like you want to just, get by me with like nothing sticking out that I can just into, like I'm going to hang all of it on whatever thing there is. I'm actually moving out of that phase. I'll just mention, just in case anyone's right in it and wondering if there's another side. But so I just wanted it to be all the things that she's unreasonably angry, she's reasonably angry, she adores him, and she still wants him after all this time, that she has really complicated feelings about sex in the wake of reproductive mayhem, that sex has brought her so much unbelievable sorrow and fear in terms of her pregnancies and her pregnancy losses. And at the same time, she adores Nick and is still attracted to him after these years. So I guess I just wanted to get to have all the things, I suppose.
I think it kind of ties in, doesn't it, to the grief or the sense of loss, because in We All Want Impossible Things, obviously the loss was very, very tangible. It's Ash's imminent loss of Edie. But one of the things I liked about Sandwich is like the losses were, I don't know, quieter, but no less significant. And it really, I found it personally interesting because it seemed to me to be at the kind of confluence of the waning of Rocky's own fertility, plus her closely held secret, plus her, I think everybody's finished it, but plus her son's girlfriend's pregnancy, all kind of like crashing up on the shore of Cape Cod at the same time.
Yeah, right. And her loss of her kids, that they're newly fledged from her home. And she's really grieving, younger moments in motherhood when they were just with her.
And the kind of potential possible loss coming up of her parents too.
Right. I know that that kind of, preemptive grief is, I just did an event with, I don't know if you know the novelist Rufi Thorpe, but she wrote Margot's Got Money Troubles and The Knockout. She's a favorite writer of mine, a true longtime favorite writer. And I was so excited to be talking to her. And I said something about like preemptive grief. And she said, that is your central artistic preoccupation. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that's true. I had never thought of it that way, but it's true that, what Rocky has, and I have to some extent, this sense that if if you're humble enough to hold loss right out in front of you, somehow you won't be sideswiped, or you won't suffer from some kind of hubris you need to be punished for. You won't fly too close to the sun. You are always saying, I know, I could lose anything. And of course, that's not really how loss works. You don't preempt it by being in its thrall that way. So that's, a big thing Rocky wrestles with is this feeling. Basically, I'll just tell you something about myself that isn't about Rocky, although Rocky, I think, does this too. Maybe literally in the book, she does this. But every time we see my parents, so my dad is 92 and my mom is 87, and I adore them just like, to the ends of the earth. And every time we drive away, they stand in the driveway and wave. And I wave and I start crying the minute we are out of sight lines from them. And I say to Michael, I feel like this is going to be the last time we see them and wave goodbye to them. And he says, you have literally been saying that for 20 years. That's really true. For 20 years, we leave and I'm like, oh my God, what if we never see them alive again? Like, enough, but no, it's just going to go on that way.
But also that's all a long, there's you doing that, but there's also a long-term relationship thing in there, isn't it? It's like the scene in the bakery where, Nick it gets her something sweet and she never has something sweet. And, those kind of interactions that have been going on 20 or 30 or 40 years, they're the kind of like the little Lego blocks that build a relationship, aren't they?
I guess they really are. The ways that someone can say to you, I know you. And it is incredibly reassuring. I'll tell just a little story, and I try not to reveal too much about her, but my daughter, who's 21 now, she this is not a story I've actually told, so just bear with me, but she had a really hard time when she was like 12. There was a confluence of things. I don't think this is super unusual, of like adolescence and some really hard social stuff at school that, I think was kind of bullying in a complicated way. And she just had a really hard time. And I had that thing you can do as a mother where it's like you wake up in the morning and you stick your invisible probe into their room and touch down and you're like, how is she doing? Not good. That weird, like you're just a vibes monitor. They come home from school and you feel it off of them, what it's like. And it was so hard. And I was just in it with her, just like really supportive, just loving, taking her for long walks, listening to music, lying quietly on her bed, whatever it was. And I could feel the ways that I couldn't help, that I just was there. And we talked about it recently. She's so bloomed into young adulthood. It's like we can talk about that time. It's not even really painful now. And she said, oh my God, no, you helped so much. You were carrying so much of the weight of it that I could let a little of it go. And I just truly burst into tears when she said that, because that is what it's like. It is in a way like when my husband says to me, you've been doing that for 20 years. What he's saying is, I see you. I'm in this with you. And it is so moving. So anyway, that made a huge impression on me. It's not like new information. Like, we know it matters to be supportive. I feel like in conclusion, it's important to support people. Like, obviously everybody knows that, but it can feel so abstract or like a drop in the bucket that somebody's suffering and you like have so little to offer besides presence or, whatever you can offer. And just to hear what a incredible effect that had on her, I'll like never get over it, basically. Sorry, Sam, I didn't mean to waffle on about that for
No,
no
you're
reason.
not waffling on. It's fascinating. And I think that it's about recognition and being seen, isn't it? And
Yeah.
well, you were talking then, I was thinking about what you were saying earlier about rage. And I think so much of what we're seeing at the moment is basically, yes, there's some hormonal stuff going on, but it's that ultimately, I think it's about lack of recognition.
Yeah.
And like you say, all that stuff you've been carrying, and nobody saying, I see you, and maybe I can't help you carry it, but I see that you're carrying
I
it.
see
Or
you.
actually,
Yeah.
maybe I can bloody help you carry it. And
Yes.
I realize I should have been and I haven't. And I think that's,
Yes. Right. And the least
know,
I can do is not gaslight you about whether or not you're
yeah.
even carrying it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I have somebody coming up on the podcast tomorrow, and like she just said, of course we're angry.
Oh, yeah.
It's no surprise that we're all bloody furious, really.
Yes. Yes. I'm with you completely.
I mean, I want to talk just a little bit about humor, because I truly think that we all want impossible things even more than Sandwich. It's probably the only book where I have both howled with laughter and wept, heartbroken on the same page. I mean, how do you do that? You must have a magic trick. How are you doing it? It's amazing.
Thank you for that, Sam. Thank you. I think it's I'm half New York Jew and half wartime England. This is what I think. So I think I have two traditions of like humor as a coping mechanism. And they're really different from each other, but they have that in common, the kind of gallows humor that are survival strategies. So, and my parents both deploy this strategy in various ways. So I think I just grew up, honestly, I think it's just like cultural. Like I grew up with humor being the main strategy for dealing with hard things. So I think it's that. Like I think the books are truly, I don't like comb through them and try to figure out where to put a joke, you know what I mean?
No. Yeah.
In fact, my daughter, who's my first reader always of everything, she's always the person who reads the book first. She will write, she's so lovely and she like loves everything and is so effusive, but she'll write in her tiny little perfect penmanship cringe next to something and it goes out of there so fast, like it leaves smoke behind it. I'm like deleting it. I can't even look at it. It is dead to me as a joke, So I'm really grateful for like little someone being like, that is one joke too many, or one joke that takes too long to tell, or whatever. Humor is really tricky. It's a thing everyone's kind of tempted to edit when they read the book, is like, I don't know about this joke, and I'm really open. I know you can fall in love with your own joke. As I know from the many long jokes my father tells me, boy, can you fall in love with your own joke. But I don't know. I do think it's like a strategy. And what was hard to write in Sandwich is the parts that are her specific to her remembering pregnancy loss. And that goes throughout the book. That is not really a spoiler. Those are not funny at all. They're basically never funny. And that was hard for me to write. Like I wanted to write them that way, but it was really counterintuitive. And I was like, are those parts boring? That's what I kept asking everyone. Are those parts boring? And people were like, no, it was like half a page. It was fine. We could choke it down.
Yeah. Yeah, because instinctively you just want to make light of it, I
Yeah,
guess.
instinctively
Yeah.
I do.
I just want to read out this comment that Lauren has posted, because in fact, Lauren had, I'm sure you don't mind me saying, Lauren had emailed me, I think at the end of last week, and was talking about, in fact, I wrote it down because I was going to quote it. I wasn't expecting Lauren to come, so I was going to quote her at you. And and now I'm not going to go. Oh, and she put it as the kind of almost sea foam quality of grief held quietly and over time. Yeah, I know. And I just thought, wow,
Just
I could
writing
not
that
have.
down. Excuse me, Lauren, while I write that
Yeah,
down.
yeah. But she's kind of, I mean, she said here that what strikes her about the presence of the preemptive grief in sandwiches, how pervasive it is, but at the same time, the knot of deeper private grief about the abortion that floats just below, well, it's the sea foam below the surface, kind of ignored, but never quite ignored.
Yes.
She really read it, like really read it. She put me to shame. It made me feel like I've got to go back and read it again more deeply.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that, it's so, that is so, it's very hard and counterintuitive to write anything nuanced about abortion. And I'm such a like bra burning feminist. Like I have no patience with anything other than full support of women's reproductive freedom and choices. And I did worry that by trying to write something nuanced, I would contribute to an argument against women's reproductive freedom. And that made me so angry that I redoubled my commitment to writing it, because the idea that we couldn't experience sorrow or nuance or whatever set of things we experience, the idea that you can't express that because you're going to feed an argument that is so antithetical to choice politics that I couldn't even stand the thought of it. And it was really important for me to write it. And I worried I'd get a lot of like pushback. I mean, there's like, there are people who don't like the book because of that, but they truly were not going to like the book anyway. I tell myself and don't really care that much, to be totally frank, but I worried that someone would be like, wow, this is really dangerous for us, like reproductively. You're really making it harder for us. And no one has said that to me. And that's a huge relief. It could be that people have felt that and not shared it, but I feel mostly incredibly well understood, which is, as we were saying before, it's like the greatest gift.
Yeah, I mean, all of the comments all evening have been about the nuance being spot on, because nothing is black and white. And just because you can feel sad about something, but still feel glad you did it, it's not,
Yeah. Or you can feel like you shouldn't have done it and still treasure the choice you had to do it in the first place, I mean, even actual regret, I feel like, is a complicated thing and is part of human experience. We regret all kinds of stuff. It doesn't, like, we don't outlaw everything that you might regret, Anyways, yeah, I really appreciate that, Lauren. Thank you.
The kind of cross-generational relationships are so beautifully drawn, but actually listening to the way you talk about your daughter in the particular, and your parents, actually, I can kind of see where they come from, because particularly Rocky's interaction with, it's Jack, isn't it? Jack and Willa are, they're fantastic. That kind of constant, that affection, but the constant kind of trepidation of, like you say, cringe.
I know. I know. Yeah. Yeah. Both my kids were just home for the weekend. our son came up from New York and our daughter came home from college, and I have this thing I do where I want to get enough of their favorite things that they come home and open the fridge and it seems like all their favorite things happen to just be in the fridge the way they always have. But I don't want it to be so many that it depresses them about my life. Like it's this thing, it's like this like tightrope you're walking of like I want it to feel just totally decadent and at home, and I want them to love everything, and I don't want them to be like, oh my God, is this all mom does when we're gone is like shop for us? You know, like it's so easy to be depressed by your own parents and their sad lives after you leave them. And I just don't want them to have that.
Oh, what's it? Actually, I should say to everyone, if you've got questions, there's so many comments, and Catherine will be able to look at them afterwards because some of them are like
will I be
super
able
long.
to see them?
Yeah, you should be able to. I can say
I can't look now because I'll be too. I have like no attention span for two things at once, but I want to look at them later.
And some of them are too long for me to kind of just paraphrase for you. But if you've got questions for Catherine, please do pop them in the chat box, because otherwise, as you can tell, we're just going to keep on yakking and you won't get a chance to ask for any questions. And I know that you've got some because of all your messages earlier. So do pop them in the chat and I'll keep an eye on it.
Oh, there's a hand up. Can we just...
Is there?
Yeah, Shayna.
Oh yeah, Shayna, do you want to... Okay, do you want to pop your mic on and ask your question?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my gosh, so many questions, and so many relate to everything from New York Jew down to 21-year-old daughter who suffered from 12 on up. So I was, and also the inflection point of midlife with that. Anything can happen at any moment at any time in our lives, but in midlife, seems bigger things can happen with, you know, the father you're thinking who's dead in the water. Like there's just these bigger things and hormonal implosion at any moment. So it seems like, yes, anything can happen at any time, but it's on steroids in midlife. And I think that came out so beautifully. But what I was so loved was Willa, and having this like super cool daughter, because I have this super cool daughter who's 21, who's way cooler than I will ever be. And the interesting thing is when I started really struggling in menopause, and particularly when I was falling apart after losing a sibling and a parent very close in time, the roles temporarily switched. And she was kind of like, you know, I would sometimes lie in bed panicked over middle of the night phone call, and she would come in and it's okay, mom. And so, but what I love that you did is that when Willa would call Rocky out on her shit, you know, whether she was being self-absorbed or whatever, the Rocky's reaction was always, oh, I just love her so much. And there was didn't ever, I mean, which was great. And there didn't ever seem to be a struggle of, wow, the roles have switched a little bit and there's a conflict that here, you know, she's the wiser grounding force and I'm the neurotic momentary mess. So I guess that dynamic, was that something that you ever thought about or that you experienced? Or yeah, because I was kind of in awe of that. I mean, Willa was my favorite. I just loved her.
Well, I'll tell her. She loves to hear that.
Tell her. Yes.
That's a great question. There's a kind of a multi-part answer, but maybe I'll just start with this. I really wanted to write, and I kind of wanted to do this in We All Want Impossible Things too. I wanted to try to write relationships that are really complex, but not driven by conflict. That was like an actual goal of mine. Partly because my family is really committed to this kind of harmonious way of being together. It's not like just obviously not like a perfectly harmonious way of being together, but it's like a way that we are. And I was wondering if you could propel a plotless book with characters who don't come into a ton of conflict with each other, which I think is a dangerous kind of thing to try to do. I think you run the risk. I think you kind of have to pick either like plot or conflict. And I don't seem to do either of those. I think Rocky has pretty much enough conflict with herself to actually push the book along a little bit. But that was the hope, was like, what if the characters aren't just like in a lot of conflict with each other? So that's why it's like that. But it's also true that, especially as they've gotten older, my kids use their truth sparingly, and I tend to defer to it when it comes up. As just like personally, I'm not talking about Rocky in the book, just that's how I feel. The kids will not, I mean, they'll give me shit all day long. I don't mean like they'll tease me about whatever, which I love to be teased. That's another way of somebody showing that they know you really well and see you. And I love to be lovingly teased, but they will not call me out on stuff unless I'm under the impression, unless they've given it a significant amount of thought. And so my inclination is to defer, because, you don't want them to feel like they can't. I mean, I always want them to be able to talk to me. And if you just come at them with all your defensive-ness, boy, is the takeaway like, ugh, don't try talking to mom. Like, I know
Yeah.
that. So anyway, I think that's what's in the book.
Thank
It's
you.
interesting. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we're told constantly that you have to have conflict to drive a narrative forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and there is so much, I mean, secrets have, there are a lot of secrets in the book, and secrets have a great deal of narrative tension. So that maybe is the kind of stand-in for conflict. I mean, they presume a certain kind of conflict in a way, that there's something you haven't shared with people who would be interested to know those things. So, it's not, I think there's sort of stand-ins for conflict.
Di wants to know if you've sold the TV or film rights of either, both.
I have sold the film rights to both. Whether they get made is like, I don't even know what the odds are, like 1 in 1,000. I know that film rights get bought up and stuff doesn't get made. There's no suggestion that anything's about to get made, but the rights are sold. Yeah.
Well, there must be a good chance. There must be.
Okay. From your lips.
Fingers
Sid.
crossed. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed. And Nicola has said that she's never felt more seen by a book than she was by Sandwich.
Thank you.
And We All Want Impossible Things is one of her favorite ever books. And when's the next one, please? Have you started it?
I have started it. I'm in my superstitious not talking about it too much mode, but yeah, I'm writing it, which means I'm past even the wool gathering. So I'm past the point where at every family gathering, all I do is transcribe every single funny thing everybody says, which drives everybody crazy.
Oh, to come from a funny family. It's very annoying. Kim, on the subject of family, Kim says she loves the parents, and she's asking what you wanted the reader to take away from the revelation about the grandparents dying at Treblinka.
What I wanted from that, so again, some of this is skirting kind of autobiographical stuff, which is why, you know, which I'm always drawn to because it's the easiest thing to write because you don't have to use your imagination. But the reason I wanted that in the book is that I wanted there to be this kind of parallel thing of where Rocky's keeping secrets and then is so angry and offended that a secret has been kept from her. And I kind of wanted there to be these multi-generations of people concealing things in other people's best interest, or that's a screen for not actually wanting to talk about it or take ownership of whatever part they have in it. So that's why that secret is revealed. And somebody told me that secret is revealed literally in the dead center of the book. Like if you counted pages, it was so strange and interesting to hear. You know, it's not obviously something I had like plotted exactly to be that way, but I think it also, sorry, I'll stop. I don't
I'm
mean
gonna
to like,
go for it. You
but
go for it
can I
while
say the
I'm
other
looking at
thing
the dead
about-
center of the book.
The other thing about, yeah, I didn't fact check that, so maybe it's not. The
Yeah.
other thing about the Holocaust for Rocky is it's like the thing for a mother whose greatest driving fear is that her kids will die or that she will lose the people she loves. There's kind of nothing like the Holocaust to make that fear very real and historical and material. And it's not unlikely that Rocky has actual inherited epigenetic trauma from the Holocaust, that, you know, there's now suggestions that those kinds of experiences change your DNA and that your kids can actually inherit certain kinds of trauma. So I did want that to be this like little
Just a small thing.
This tiny.
You just dropped that in.
Just a wee touch of the Holocaust. I just wanted that to be in the book that way. But thank you for that question.
But the way you did that, I mean, like you say, it's such a huge thing, but you did manage to drop it in. And it was an element, but it didn't become a thing. It didn't become the thing which it could so easily have done. It could have taken the book off in lesser hands in a completely different direction.
Yes, I did have to just kind of almost leave it because it was so massive, and I had just kind of dropped it into the book in a kind of a way I understood was a little strange.
Going back to the conflict point, Amy has said that she really felt the conflict with motherhood, that kind of sense that you're feeling, these are Amy's words, that you're being betrayed by your own body, and that they're your everything, but you're kind of also being pulled apart by them a bit. I'm not a mum, so I can't.
Exactly another conflict. And thank you for that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that is one of the central conflicts, is her experience of motherhood as the absolute pinnacle of her life's purpose and joy, and a thing that is also kind of destroying her. Thank you. That's what I'll say next time somebody asks me.
Yeah. Basically, the comments, I don't think we've ever had so many comments, and they're just all full of massive compliments.
Oh, thank you.
Your head will be just too big to even leave the room if I read them out.
I know.
I'll make
luckily,
sure.
I'm in this. I have a high ceiling here.
Yeah. I've got something I really want to ask you, but Lauren, Lauren of Seafoam Grief. So she wants to ask you about the time shifts in Sandwich, because there is a lot of present and past, but it's not that, that annoying, the way that this sounds like a very personal grudge, and it might be slightly, but there's the way some commercial fiction editors make you do, and this is not, you probably haven't got a commercial fiction editor, that's probably why this didn't happen, but you often do end up with, oh, it has to be very formulaic, the past and the present, and they have to, the reader, treat the reader like they're stupid and they have to know where you're going. But you have managed to do the time shifts without doing that.
Well, I'm glad. They did confuse, they have been confusing to some people, and I regret that, honestly. I wanted there to be a little slow drip of confusion about which pregnancy we were talking about in any given flashback. I wanted it to be confusing. I wanted it to just to speak openly about what I was trying to do. I wanted it to seem like it was one pregnancy, that she was sort of misremembering or getting the ages of her kids wrong, or like I wanted there to be little shifts that made it seem strange but not clear that there'd been multiple pregnancies. So that's partly why there's that repeated structure about, like, the summer Jamie was however old and Willow was however old, is because those ages aren't always the same. And I wanted it to be like that.
Yeah, and that, for me, that did frame it. And several people in the comments are saying that they found that the way you use the children's ages in the structure really did anchor it, and actually, is an anchor in your memory as your children grow up.
That is right. That is the way, once you have kids, so much of it has to do with the ages of your kids, that's the, it's like, I still can't even believe, I'll just be talking to Michael and I'll be like, wait, which spring was that? And he'll be like, oh, that was the spring that the kids' school did Pirates of Penzance. And I'm like, oh yeah, I know which spring we're talking about. Like, neither of my kids was in it even. Like, just the way that their little lives, like, are all the touch points, Probably we had to, like, process it a lot because someone had a knife or something and my kids were, like, petrified. Who knows? Anyways.
You wrote 2 memoirs about parenting. Which do you prefer? Do you prefer fiction or nonfiction?
I'm not sure anymore. Sorry, that's just my phone being weird. I maybe right now, because it's what I'm writing, I might prefer fiction. I used to be afraid of fiction. This is what I used to say. I used to say memoir is like one of those cooking shows where they give you a basket of ingredients and tell you to make dinner. And maybe it's not like the ingredients you wanted, but it's very confining and helpful in that way. So it's like, you have a fillet of sole and a bag of licorice and like a red pepper, and you have to turn that into an entree. And you're like, okay, whatever, like, this is what I've got. And I always think that nonfiction is that, like memoir, you have this finite amount of stuff and your job is just to, like, put it together in some way that people can, like, read it and digest it. And then fiction is just like, whatever you want in the entire world is available to you. You're not really constrained by anything. And I used to think that was too scary. Like, I did have this moment writing We All Want Impossible Things, which is, again, a very autobiographical novel in many, many ways. And I was writing it a little married to the truth for a while. And then at some point I was like, oh my God, it's a novel. And I sat down to dinner. My kids were home because it was the pandemic. And I said, you guys, I just realized, like, it's fiction. I don't even think she's going to die. And they were like, oh, Mom, no, Like, that's not what fiction is for. Like, fiction is not like your personal wish fulfillment, and you write a terrible, unbelievable book that everyone doesn't read because it's awful. They were like, no, she does have to die. I was like, bummer. Anyways, but I love that fiction, because it's fiction and because you protect the people in your life by the fact of it being fictional, that nobody knows what parts are true and what parts are fake unless you blurt it out in a kind of book club setting. I love that you can get at the truth almost directly because you're not exposing anybody. I mean, I'm always happy to expose myself in nonfiction, but you can just get at it without all this, like, I can't really say that because that's going to reveal this. And you can always fictionalize whatever it is to protect people, but you can just get right at it. You can say things that are completely true in a way that in memoir, I have not found to be totally the case. So for me, fiction is like a much truer genre.
That's so interesting. I mean, we've run out of time, but Vicky's just posted something that made me think of something else I wanted to ask you. I mean, she said her children remember everything in the past by what they ate, which she never. But I have a feeling you might do that because food is pretty prominent in Sandwich. Well, in both books, but particularly in Sandwich.
Yes. No, I do that too. And my kids do it too, Vicky. My son is very like the way we're like, oh, that was the Pirates of Penzance Spring. He'll be like, no, that was the summer you got that bad lobster roll. And I'll be like, oh, that summer, like, oh yeah, I know the summer. Yes. No, we totally have all these like layered food memories, where it's like you remember eating the thing, and while you were eating it, you were talking about how you ate it the year before. It's just like a, house of mirrors of food memories. 100%.
Are your sandwiches as good as Rocky's?
Yes. My sandwiches, Sam, thank you for asking. They are so good and really quite legendary. And I do make everyone tell me how good they are. And God help you if you've gotten like 5 bites into your sandwich and have not thought to tell me this is the best sandwich I've ever eaten in my life.
What's your best sandwich?
The tuna sandwich that Rocky makes, the one with pepperoncini peppers and celery and dill. And that is such a good sandwich.
It does sound good. I could keep you all night, but I better not. Before we wrap up, I just am going to do a quick show and tell of next month's book club title, everybody. And you know the drill. I'll announce it tomorrow, but because you're here and they aren't, then you get first dibs. So email me if you want a copy. Next month is Ordinary Time by Kathy Rensenbrink, and it's kind of, have you read it?
No, I know Kathy Rensenbrink only because Nina's
lovely,
always writes about her.
Yes. Well, Nina's quoted for it, but they're mates, so that's kind of cheating. But it's a kind of a reimagining of Anna Karenina, but with the lead character is a kind of a reluctant vicar's wife on more midlife turmoil, basically. So if you fancy it, email me, but I'll be sending an email tomorrow. Catherine, thank you so much. Jellyfish is really bored. She's had 3 baths. She's like hanging off the sofa now. She's like, oh, can you guys just shut up?
I'm going to bring you over just to see her tiny little face.
Oh,
okay.
Jellyfish.
Good girl.
It's great.
Well, it was so lovely to be with you all. Will you screenshot those comments for me or otherwise share them so I can?
Yeah, it should save them, but I'm actually gonna go through and screenshot them before I end the meeting, just in case, because there's so many great comments and some really long ones. So I will sit here. You lot all go about your lives, and I will sit here and screenshot them all for you. Okay, bye everybody, thank you.